What's up, guys? Thought I'd make a quick casual chat video before tomorrow, the big day where we're gonna be tackling the long-awaited Thaemine raid. So this has been hyped up for a pretty long time now. It's kind of culminated to a bit of a boiling point, especially with the sick trailers that they dropped for the raid a few days ago, including the CGI cinematic. That's like all the buzz right now. So tomorrow, as soon as the server's opening, me and my team are going to be heading into the raid and beginning our raid Prog. And we're gonna try and do our best, as there are special rewards for the top 10 teams that manage to clear the encounter. We're gonna try our very hardest. We're definitely at a bit of a gear disadvantage. It's not that our team is poorly geared. Our team's pretty well geared. I think most of our teammates are at around the 1640 item level range. So we're 10 higher than the entry item level. I don't think anyone's really considering entry item level like really not possible, but competitive for like a first clear kind of thing. But you never know. I mean, historically, Brelshaza, the first clear, that was the previous hardest first raid that came out, or not first raid, but first week raid that came out. And the first clear party for that was almost exclusively on item levels. So I would say that gear is definitely a crutch, and it's definitely going to help, but it's not going to be what solves the fight. So Thaemine's raid, 4 gates. The developers said that they're expecting many of the competitive groups to enter the 3rd gate by the 3rd day. And then they're expecting the 3rd gate by itself to take a day or two, and then they're expecting the 4th gate to take a week to clear. And that's like obviously a bit of an overestimation on their part, because in order to qualify for the top 10 clear rewards, you have to clear it within the first week. So they're definitely implementing this with the expectation that groups clear it within the first 7 days, all 4 gates. But it definitely has been talked up a lot. So they talked about the difficulty of the gates a little bit. They mentioned how gates 1 and 2 are kind of designed to, obviously some time is going to be needed to solve them, but they're designed to be homeworkable in the future. As in, like, if you didn't want to put yourself through like torment, you could do something like 1 2 hard, 3 normal, for example, after learning the raid, after guides come out, all that kind of stuff, maybe after nerfs are implemented. But even then, the estimation that most competitive groups would not make it to the 3rd gate until the 3rd day is kind of interesting, because, for example, a con, the entire raid was cleared in the first 24 hours. And so they're expecting that the first 2 gates of Thaemine's raid will be more difficult than anything you can find in the entirety of a con. So it should still be challenging, the problem-solving aspect of it, for sure. I think the best groups, the absolute best groups, will definitely make it either through the 2nd gate or close to clearing the 2nd gate on the 1st day. And then I think the teams that lag behind a little bit might be more in that range of day 2, day 3, getting through the first 2 gates kind of deal. So I am kind of expecting that the best of the best will make it to the 3rd gate by the 2nd day, which is like a little bit faster than what the devs think for like competitive pacing. So it's gonna be definitely challenging. I've prepared a common question that I have been receiving lately has been, why aren't you progging on Sorceress? Why are you progging on AT Scatter? There's a few reasons why. The first and number 1 reason is the lack of utility. Sorceress doesn't actually have good utility. Her stagger, weak point, and her counter are on the lower side, especially if you're playing the build that I'm playing without Inferno. And why do I play Reverse Gravity? I play Reverse Gravity simply because it stupid proofs the meter, so that you definitely fill up the meter before your Doomsday comes off cooldown, and because technically the skill does more damage in that slot than the alternative. Granted, that damage is offset by being a 6M build instead of a 7M build. That being said, the lack of utility is definitely a problem because when I talk about utility, I'm talking about on-demand utility. The reality of things is Sorceress's counter isn't that bad, but you sacrifice meter. Her stagger is not that bad, but the skills are long channel and slow, and her weak point's actually excellent, except all the skills that do great weak point have long channels, and they're typically not skills that you wouldn't like. They're not skills you would want to throw in DR. And so that's like the inherent issue, is that when it comes like on-demand stagger and on-demand weak point, a sorceress is really bad at that unless you're willing to burn your identity meter to fast cast. I could have ran Reflux, and I actually did build Reflux because I was kind of expecting to prog with Sorceress, but then I ran into a problem with Reflux that I wasn't quite expecting, and that was it plays Nightmare. It plays Nightmare and it plays around the endless MP state. And for certain classes that play around the endless MP state, it's very taxing. You basically have to always be casting because as soon as you fall out of your endless MP state, your DPS drops. These builds, they benefit more from having that CDR than they benefit from being in the mana addiction state. And so it's actually very stressful. And I thought about that and I was like, I'm gonna be progging for a week plus. Do I really want to be playing something where I have to constantly be casting all of my skills non-stop, just stressing about that rather than the fight? So I was like, okay, this isn't really much of an option either, especially because the Reflux build that I was playing in particular was a shared build with the Igniter gems, and so the mana consumption rate wasn't even that high compared to a standard crit flux build, which has better mana consumption, which would be able to maintain the state a little bit easier. So I found all those things to be a big turnoff to progging with Sorceress because Prog is a different beast. I thought a con was really easy with Sorceress Prog because the things that you needed when it came to counter, weak point, and stagger, for the most part, other people can handle them if you sort of know what you're doing. During Prog, it was a different story. During Prog, I wish I had all those things, but like looking back in hindsight now, it wasn't that bad. But in a new Prog raid following Voldike, which was the Abyss dungeon that was released with the Voldis region, I noticed that they really overloaded the raid with a ton of stagger, weak point, and counter mechs. Like a ton of them. You can find more stagger, weak point, and counter mechs in Voldis Abyssal Dungeon than like the last like 3 Legion raids put together. It's crazy. There's just so much of it. And so there's this insane shift of emphasis from doing damage to being able to handle all these other things that aren't related to damage. And I was like, Sorceress is not good at this when you only have a few seconds to do them. During prolonged mechs, like a Con G2 0-bar mech, yeah, the weak point on Sorceress is fantastic, but I'm banking more on the kind of stagger checks and weak point checks where they only give you like 4, 5, 6 seconds to actually do them, and that's where Sorceress falls off pretty hard. So I picked up AT Scouter, which is something that I've been playing for actually a really long time. I put it on a hiatus for like 2 or 3 months, but I had been playing it for well over a year at this point, like much longer than that. And I play 332 around 50-50 split hallucination build because my team, I will not have crit synergy in my team, and hallucination AT Scouter is more powerful than salve when you don't have a crit synergy in the party. So I'm basically building my entire scouter around that. I'm actually going Swift heavy, and some people might be confused by this, and it's because I'm trying to build it so that I'm movement speed capped without using Feast and without using Mobile Shot, so that I have high CDR, no battery issues because I can use Mobile Shot battery charge, and also I can take HP Feast. And with HP Feast, I'm sitting at around 240,000 HP, which for a scouter is insane. That's a lot of HP, and it also scales my Iron Man shield. So there's a lot of benefits from me going for that in Prog. It'll be just considerably safer. Also being able to do good damage. So I've been practicing AT Scouter a lot more with the new builds. I've been doing a lot of labbing, theory crafting. I've been talking a lot with the Scouter chat in the Lost Ark Discord, and yeah, just tons of practice in places like Hellbrell and stuff. Speaking of which, we just cleared Hellbrell with our Thaemine static party last night, which was nice because 2 people in that party had never done Hellbrell. In fact, they never stepped in Hell mode in general, and one of them hadn't even cleared Hardbrell before. So it was fun to go in there, and I think we spent a total of 7 hours across 2 days to get them there clear, which was great. Our roster is pretty interesting. We ended up recruiting a Reaper for the 8th member of the party. Originally, it was a Gunslinger, but 2 of our members had to leave the party because one was a student and was kind of not doing well on their exams, so they had to prioritize real life. And the other one was an actor, and they had a stage play on the day of the Prog, and they couldn't commit to raiding, unfortunately. So we recruited an artist that has Sidereal +6 weapon, which is pretty awesome. And we recruited a Reaper, which was an unusual pick. A lot of people are surprised by that because Reaper is considered a very risky pick. In fact, a lot of like super highly geared Reapers have been getting gatekept in Korea, not because of lack of damage, but because people are wary of their survivability rate compared to other classes, because survivability is super important for Prog. The person that we recruited, highly skilled person in video games in general. They were a StarCraft pro. They had a lot of high-end achievements in Blade and Soul, which has notoriously difficult PvE stuff. And yeah, I mean, he's super cool. The party itself, really chill group, actually a lot of fun. We have 3 English-speaking members in the group. Me, Tofu, and sort of Lustboy. Lustboy is kind of like the in-between mediator for Korean comms and English comms. The Korean members, they know a little bit of English, which is super helpful because it's going to be a bit of a language barrier again, just like last time, just like every time pretty much. And that leads me to the next question that I often get. What happened to the content creator Thaemine party? So originally we had the OG Akan streamer party, but instead of Foss, we had Memorizer, and instead of MJ, we had Wine Blue. And then a few months ago, we learned that ATK couldn't commit to the streamer group, and he left to join Mint's party. And then not long after that, we learned, well, not long after that, Stoops kind of fractured his hip. And we learned that he needed to get a new surgery. And we weren't sure when he was going to get that surgery, so he dropped out of Prog altogether. There were a lot of benefits from doing that. 1, he didn't have to worry about committing to that. 2, he could focus on Jumpstart. And 3, it would save him a lot of money because he doesn't really play on the Korean server much, so his character was really weak, and it would have required a shit ton of funding, like real money funding, for him to catch up as someone who literally does not play on that region. Like, if you farm and play the game regularly, it dampens the cost of progression greatly. But if you don't play at all and you're trying to cover the entire cost with real money, that's when it gets to these like extraordinary sums in the thousands. And so the idea of just like him not committing to the Prog just worked out to be better. It saved him money, it relieved a lot of pressure. So instead, this is completely unrelated, but Stoops is going to be doing IRL commentary on the raid instead, and also helping us a little bit out, because he's a very good problem solver. So he's going to be kind of like watching our gameplay, and if he notices stuff, he's going to let us know, because I think our group's going to want to do a lot of back-to-back pulling, and it's so difficult with Prog raiding because you have to strike this really interesting balance between pulling so that you can glean more, so you can obtain more information, and then stopping to analyze what you've done so you can make sense of that information that you're gleaning from your pulls. If you pull too much, then you might not be, I guess, interpreting that information in a useful manner. But if you spend too much time analyzing, you might not have enough information to process it. So it's this weird balance. That's why every single competitive group in like a serious race to world first MMO, because Lost Ark doesn't really count in that regard, especially because it's Korea only for like new raid releases. In like real games that do race to world versus like Final Fantasy and WoW, every serious competitive team has a 9th man, sometimes a 10th man, sometimes 11th man, and sometimes a whole team to analyze and try and find solutions to these ambiguous puzzles. And that being said, apparently Thaemine is not very gimmick heavy, and it's more normal mech heavy, which is supposed to challenge players' reflexes and their ability to adapt around these complex, multi-layered normal patterns. So instead of like these weird puzzles that you have to solve where the solution is very vague and you just kind of like trial and error until you get to something that doesn't raid wipe you, instead it's going to be like fast telegraphs back to back to back, and you have to like be on your toes and dodge everything. And I think that plays up to my strengths a little bit, and it helps a lot with a team that has a language barrier, because it's more focused on individual skill and prowess more so than team play. I'm sure there's going to be tons of team gimmicks as well, but yeah, going back to what I was talking about before, we decided that it just wouldn't be the same. The thing about the Icon Prog was that it was filled with a lot of colorful personalities, with the Foss and MJ being among the most colorful personalities of them all. They were very outgoing, crazy, funny to be around. While a lot of the other members, including myself, Lustboy, Zeals, like a lot of the members of the Icon party, actually, when they're locked in and dialed in, they don't actually talk much. We're just focused on our play and trying to do our best, and it's hard to also be entertaining at the same time. Not everyone could be like Foss, where he's just like giggling and laughing, but also playing like a maniac at the same time. It's very it's its own skill set to be like that, honestly. So we figured it just wouldn't be entertaining, so we decided to leave. And yeah, we wanted to go for a more serious prog because we weren't sure how committed everyone was to actually going for like a first clear kind of thing. And I'll be honest, I don't actually feel that bad, because almost everybody that we did leave, I actually barely play with them, to be completely honest with you. Most of them play during daylight hours, which is normally when I'm sleeping, and then during the evening I'm usually, nowadays I play with like ATK and Lustboy and Tofu and those guys, and you know, those guys aren't in the party, so the people that we're playing with, actually, if anything, we're closer to them than the other party. So we gave them 2 weeks of notice that we were joining a different party. It literally sounds like a job. But yeah, we joined up with a new party. So some of my old teammate Eden is the raid leader for that party. I'm gonna link somewhere in the description a link out to a PowerPoint that I made for the stream, because I wanted to make like a little show out of it. It's a PowerPoint that basically tells you our whole roster lineup, a little bit about each of the members, and it links out to their LOAs as well. So if you're curious what builds they're running at the time of, you can reference that PPT and it'll bring you there. So it's a good little document. It also has links out to everybody's streams that will be streaming. I think 6 members total will be broadcasting their POVs of the 8. One of them's on Africa TV, the Reaper. But yeah, as far as like gatekeeping goes, we weren't really looking to gatekeep with our party. We were looking really for people that were 1635 or higher. Made an exception for Tofu, because you know, Tofu is solid. He's good, and he's playing on a really strong class, and he's one of our friends, of course. But for recruiting, like in the empty slots, the criteria we were looking for was 1635 and up, which is 5 higher than the entry item level, and okay with English in the comms, and also okay with very degen rating hours, like 10 plus hours a day. And that was it. There was no class gatekeeping on our side, but we did require that people who applied to our party had to submit a gameplay video. And I know that sounds intense. That sounds like a goddamn resume. That sounds even more gatekeepy. The thing is, we needed to see how they play. We just needed an idea. And the thing with gameplay video is they don't even tell you really how good a player is. They just tell you how good someone is on farm in an individual instance that they just happen to record. So I just assumed that anyone who submitted a video would be really good at DPS. So what I looked for in these videos, and I only reviewed a berserker applicant, was how they handle mechs. Do they hold their skills? Do they full send it? How fast do they get into position? That kind of stuff. Because like, if you send me like a gameplay video of you just like completely destroying Vicus, you know, I have no idea how long it took for you to get to that point where you were that skilled at it. It doesn't tell me how good someone is in Prog, and that's like the other thing. Being Hell Raiders doesn't mean anything. It literally means nothing. If anything, at best, it means that you've got tenacity, you've got grit, you're willing to stick it out for the long haul to get an achievement. But it doesn't tell anything about skill. Like, it's completely meaningless being a Hell Raider when it comes to skill level, because you don't know how long someone took to get that Hell achievement. You don't. And it's impossible to tell if they spent like half a year on it or a year on it, or if you know, they got it after a few days because they're insane. The quality of their teammates is a big deal as well. When they started doing it, if there were guides and tips available for more seasoned Hell Raiders. And so like having a Hell title really doesn't actually mean much, and it definitely doesn't say anything about skill. And you guys have seen this. I'm sure you guys always had that meme of like Demon's Floor or Addicted to Floor, because like, you know, in a brand new raid, everyone is equal, more or less. So even though we have a lot of Hell achievements under our title, that doesn't really say much. But what does say much is we have a lot of members who are involved in top 10 clears in Korea. So I would like to say that our ability to actually analyze information and find solutions to problems is decent. And I think that is by far the most important thing. Smilegate seems to agree as well, as they mentioned that the raid is going to introduce a lot of unique mechs that haven't been in previous raids before. And so the players that make it through these first few gates are going to be the ones that are really good at problem solving. More than anything else. So we need to put a strong emphasis on that for sure if we want to pass. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. We're gonna try for the top 10 clears. There's a special title, statue, and trophy for the top 10 parties that are able to clear in the first week. So this is actually the very first time where the stakes are high. There's an actual tangible reward. Competition's actually going to be really fierce for this one. A lot of people are actually coming back to Lost Ark to participate in this race because this is the big bad. Thaemine is the big bad of the game. He's basically the Maple Story Black Mage equivalent, or Lich King World of Warcraft. He is the big bad guy, and to that point I think that the raid that comes after him, Khazros, will be an easier raid, and part of that also has to do with the fact that Lost Ark or Smilegate tries to not release back-to-back really difficult raids nowadays. So, you know, it'll go like difficult, easier, difficult, easier, difficult, easier. So I'm expecting Khazros to actually not be that bad, even though it is a culmination point. I'm just saying not as bad as Thaemine. Thaemine is literally marketed up to be insanely difficult. And difficulty is a bit overrated. We've talked about this before, where like casual players don't care about difficulty. So I am really hoping that the normal mode version of this raid is like way easier. Like I'm talking about Rehearsal Clown versus Normal Clown, or Deja Vu Brel versus Hard Brel. Like I'm expecting a huge gap in difficulty so that casual players at 1610, which is just plus 17, I believe, have a content that they can enjoy in that range. Whereas people who are 1630 can challenge themselves. Smilegate talked about how they're planning on releasing this raid overtuned to make it extra hard and then nerf it later on down the line so it's more accessible after the fact. But the rewards are pretty crazy. It's 3 gates. The 4th gate is something that you can clear once every 2 weeks. The 4th gate's always there, but you have a lockout that's once every 2 weeks. So that's less pressure. The first 3 gates, you clear them every week, and then the 4th gate, you just need to clear them once within a 14-day span. And the 4th gate, like, when I say that they are talking up the difficulty, they are very serious about this, because the 4th gate is worth as much gold as the other 3 gates combined. In total, the raid is worth 41,000 gold, which with 20,000 of it being from the 4th gate by itself. And so it should be crazy. They haven't shown any footage of the 4th gate, so there actually has to be some insane lore implications as well. So I'm fully expecting between the 3rd gate and 4th gate to be a cutscene where the helmet shatters and we just see his face and see who he really is. Because there's like a trillion theories about Thaemine. Is it Kadan from another universe? Is it his twin brother or something? Is it his father? Is it a split fragment of the original god of chaos, Zazma? There's like so many theories behind who Thaemine is. We saw in the CGI cinematic he's got the long silver hair, which we also saw in the card artwork, so we've known that he kind of has some similar characteristics to Kadan. So it'll be really interesting to see, and I'm sure it'll be a really big hype moment for sure. And then reward wise, they talked about the Transcendence system. So it's a new vertical progression system, kind of like elixirs. You're basically playing Minesweeper. You're clearing out these blocks, and the less turns it takes for you to clear out the blocks, the more of a stat gain you get on your items. And it does have RNG built into it, but it looks less RNG than elixirs, and it looks a lot simpler complexity wise of a system. I'm not sure how much power it gives. But it is a gold sink as well. Again, it looks cheaper. It uses Stones of Chaos just like elixirs, but in this patch, I believe they're making it so that all Stones of Chaos on your account become roster wide. So if you have Stones of Chaos on alts that you're not using, you can actually funnel them over to a main, either for quality taps or for elixirs or for Transcendence now, which should lower the cost considerably for sure. So what we'll probably try and do is after like the first gate or 2, we'll probably transcend our items to give us a little stat edge in the later gates as well. So yeah, that's the plan. I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'm super excited. For me, I live for this kind of thing in MMOs. It's by far my favorite part of MMO raiding is prog raiding. Just wiping over and over, smashing your head against the wall until something sticks, and then eventually you get to a point where you just get that lucky pull where everybody's on top of their game and you pull out you just pull off just the most miraculous victory and everyone celebrates. And I live for that. I might be 30 years old now, but like the dopamine rush associated with overcoming adversity in a raid is still there for me. I love it. And like I've been talking about it a lot, but God, I really want to play World of Warcraft, to play Mythic Plus as well. I really want to play Final Fantasy, to play Savages and Ultimates as well. I'd love to do that. Those games look super appealing to me, and it's no joke. I know tribalism is a thing, but I think almost every single MMO I can think of has something that looks attractive to me gameplay wise. So maybe when all this kind of, you know, works itself out and we get through this whole ordeal, we can gather some of our friends and maybe play some of those other things, because I think it could be good to try them out. But Lost Ark with it's just looking really good right now. Like a lot of positive changes, and I'm really hoping that most of them port over to the West quickly. Like they keep riding momentum really, really, really well. I'm still worried about Gold River leaving in December and being replaced by a new director of his choice, because it's going to be pretty much impossible to find someone who is that in touch with the pulse of the game. Also knows the game really well, but I'm hoping for the best, because a lot of positive things happened after he came back, and I don't want us to go towards that point again where we feel like we're lacking direction or the game is moving without direction. It's very, very important to keep this momentum strong, because it's helping a lot with the recovery of the game's player base. All right, that's enough from me. So our prog begins 6 p.m. PST tomorrow, after the time of this posting. If you don't get to catch it, hopefully you'll be able to catch a YouTube upload of our eventual clear. And I really hope to see you guys there cheering us on. I probably won't be talking that much to chat because I'll be very hyper fixated on the raid, but it'll mean a lot to see if you guys are there. And by the way, during the raid, all gloves are off. There's no such thing as backseating or spoilers. You are free to say and share whatever you find, because this is a race and there are no purposeful self handicaps for that. We'll do whatever it takes to secure one of those top 10 spots. So I hope to see you guys there, and yeah, hope you have a good one.